Hey guys, welcome back to Drag the Waters podcast, the cultural political commentary podcast with two Texas bros. I am one of your hosts, Aaron James, anarchist cultist, sitting here with
Mario, DT Dubs represent.
yeah, man. And we just found out that Mario sits in the IQ range of the people who normally go to Harvard.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we know he's smart.
Yeah, it makes me, I guess, I don't know, not proud, not happy. Just like understand that I wasn't able to go to college in my youth because of two things: fear of becoming in debt, and then also kind of a pride because I didn't want to ask for help. And so I ended up dropping out of college twice because I couldn't pay for tuition. But it turns out here that the average IQ for Harvard students is 129.4, and that the sample was between 124.6 and 148.
Okay.
And then this study, they were talking about how IQ was originally evolved through social structure, and people that had higher intelligence, like interacting with society, to do with envy and understanding that you had to not necessarily like act like you were dumber, but like not be all, I guess how we started this podcast, like, oh, I'm fucking smart or whatever, like, because you were more likely to be punished if you had like a higher intelligence and a higher productivity.
Yeah, you just want to think what you want, but act like everybody else.
Yeah, if you have natural gifts that elevate you above others, you must be aware of the dangers and avoid flaunting such talents. Instead, you want to strategically reveal some flaws to blunt people's envy and mask your natural superiority. If you're gifted in the sciences, make it clear to others how you wish you had more social skills, so your intellectual clumsiness at subjects outside your expertise, just to make people feel better about themselves.
Well, you say I'm pretty intelligent, and I live with my grandma. Still working on our house for everyone. Oh, by the way, thanks for everyone who's hanging out with us tonight or any night, really. We're happy to have you with us. But yeah, have you the only theory I know as far as like the evolutionary impetus for the IQ divergence or whatever is, I think it's the latitude theory. Whereas the humans, when they went further north, and I guess when the ice age either began or ended, and the climate patterns started to shift, because climate change has always been a thing.
Yeah.
Even before modern technology. Especially when we moved into like the Neolithic era with agriculture, you had to, if you weren't smart enough to plan your farming with winter coming on, the dumb people couldn't do that, ended up dying more often. So the theory is that it's a reason why people who were often found ancestrally to live at more northern latitudes would have higher IQs.
Right.
Because it's mostly about pattern recognition and timing and all that stuff, solving puzzles.
Less abundance.
Yeah, so you had to organize much more effectively to survive in the harsher climates. So, and on that also kind of makes sense to me is why the I think we've talked about this before, how there's a theory that there was two different I guess families of Cro-Magnon or whatever, or that the specific monkeys that diverged into humanity, like the northern monkeys were more violent, and
because they had to be more competitive.
They have to be more competitive, more scarce resources. The extra violence would probably help out when there's less abundance to make sure you get to survive.
Right.
So violent, smart people on average or whatever.
Yeah, and having that competition. And then that also, like, I imagine that was what's it called, a pressure to just become more efficient in the killing, right?
Yeah, it compounds in a brutal way.
Mm-hmm.
So you get more food, more murder.
Yeah.
So
Weapons.
yeah, that kind of stuff definitely.
Different tools, martial arts.
Yeah, because you had to compete I guess at a certain point too. Once you had the farm, once the food supply was taken care of, then you had more leisure time to like develop other things.
Mm-hmm.
So then that technology spiral, that science burst, and civilization just boom,
Mm-hmm.
Civilization, and then you start steamrolling other people because they're lagging two years behind
and taking their stuff. Yeah, I remember there was a documentary I watched on it was like the search for Atlantis, and so they were like reading about Atlantis and trying to find out where that was. And so you can think of it as survival of the fittest, not only applied to like nature but also to like production and thought and stuff, because they had found a society that was like really advanced in architecture, really advanced in agriculture and all these things, and they were in like southeastern Spain. And then they were trying to figure out what happened to them, and their conclusion was that they had no like war tradition, and they had like little to no weaponry. So somebody came and saw like all the shit that they had and were like, well, I want this shit, and murdered them, And then the same thing, I know this was recent study to prove it counterproves like the Western imperialism, colonialism theory that Europeans are the most violent thing on the planet or whatever, because they found that the original inhabitants of the Caribs were the Caribbean.
Right.
Were murdered from migrants from South America. So the original inhabitants, or the further back inhabitants of the Caribbeans, were displaced by, what would you say, imperialist southern warrior tribes.
It's just I think that colonialism is tied to white supremacy and having superior culture, superior technology, but the whole raiding, the whole violent, it's a strategy. So it's like, if you're not settled and producing, there's a whole viable strategy of just moving to someone else's land, take their stuff, take their women, enslave everyone else.
Yeah, and have them pay tribute, or else you're going to come back and fuck them up.
And do that. And that's a viable strategy till someone has the technological and social superiority to stop that.
Right.
Or cultural superiority.
A good example of that would be the Aztecs. So the Aztecs made no mathematical or, what's the word? They didn't come up with like new architectural structures. They didn't come up with like new tools for building. They didn't come up with like new cycles for agriculture. They didn't come up with new astrology or anything like that. They just like manhandled everyone around them and then took like their technology and adopted it as their own, and then like made everyone pay tribute to them through the flower wars. I believe they're called flower wars, where they would come and do skirmishes, and then just to take captives. So it's like, hey, you're within our territory and you didn't pay up this month, so we're going to show up, kill a couple people, take a couple people, and y'all better be ready for next time or whatever. And so they had like hundreds of years of flower wars, which is why, and they had a bunch of enemies because they were just suppressing all these little classes, so that when Cortez came through, he was able to, create a little federation of tribes, and then had them show them where the capital was.
Yeah, I believe it, man. There is something to be said about not oppressing too hard when you're the dominant class. I mean, that's the whole point. Or I don't know whose philosophy. I mean, that's the whole point of like the Communist Manifesto, is that the uprising of the proletariat to remake, society. But I don't know. I don't think I've read anything too specific, not in a while, about certain thinkers. Just like you can't have too much pressure on the lower classes, otherwise then they do get violent. And there's got to be some bread and circuses, some handouts to keep people in check. Those different socializing forces,
right,
to keep people pacified. If the United States government would just legalize marijuana already,
that'd be a lot. You'd create a very pacified population, or at least a large percentage. I understand that in states that have legalized, marijuana is now preferred over alcohol, which is good because alcohol makes people violent.
Yeah, it's more negative impacts on people's health, as far as I know.
Take it back. It doesn't make them violent, but I've never met a stoner that wants to get in a fight, and I've seen a bunch of drunken fights before.
Yeah.
At bars and UFC events.
I bet spousal abuse is not correlated with pot use as it is with alcohol and stuff. I mean, nah, man, you get stoned, you just want to chill, eat a bunch of food, maybe talk a bunch. Depends on if you got the endo or the sativa. Play guitar or whatever.
Hell yeah.
Kick out the jams, but yeah, violence is generally not on the menu unless you're unless that's the baseline of the culture you're dealing in, or if you're mixing drugs, which can happen if you're doing pills and alcohol and stuff. Then it's a complex situation.
What are your thoughts on drugs in general?
It's pretty much just provide them clean and cheap.
Yeah, I agree. And I think I take the libertarian stance.
So if I'm
be legal,
take away all barriers, and because what causes addiction isn't. The science probably says that there are, correlations between certain drugs and habitual use. But there's other studies that say the real creator of addiction is isolation. It's a mental illness more than it is physical dependency. So, because there's stories of Vietnam War vets are doing heroin to deal with their PTSD overseas, and then when they came back, they didn't keep using heroin,
right? Because
they came back into a community.
Had community.
I don't know too many well-to-do people, well-adjusted people who are doing hard, serious drugs.
I don't know. I would say that I met quite a few people.
If their parents are if they have good parents, come from a good family.
I don't know. It's still then, I remember. You never when you're growing up. I guess you
could be really bored. If you're really bored, you can start dicking around with hedonists.
I realized I met a bunch of really productive people that were on coke a lot.
Well, yeah, that's part of the deal. That's the kind of drug that's for.
And then the party drug would be the Molly, I guess.
Yeah, Molly. Yeah.
But that's, then again, that's also in certain scenes,
performance enhancing drugs, dude. If you work and you want to work better, I'm not against that. If it's the problem is when people become addicted and the drugs are so expensive, they have to resort to crime to get their fix.
Yeah, or just empowering drug lords. I think that would be my biggest
that too
thing is there's always going to be a black market. So why create a black market when you can tax and revenue? The United States is the largest drug consuming country on the planet.
Yeah.
So that's why would you limit that market to the black market? Why would you empower potential rivals? When you could just make fat stacks. But also, I would say that there needs not necessarily regulation, but how would you say it? The way it happened in Portugal is it was a perspective change. So instead of these heroin addicts and these drug addicts being criminals, they're considered alcoholics, a mental illness, and then they could get those resources, and then you could even use the tax revenue from these drugs to open up that part of the economy. And then you can help, all the people who have counseling degrees and psychology degrees that are currently unemployed, you can actually open up a market for them to help. And I think that will also help with the homeless population as well. There's a lot of addicts there.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, it'd be good. There's just a lot of bad incentives for. I mean, it's the real evil of the world about why we don't legalize these things and empower the black market is because there's people making money off of selling guns to these cartels. They have a stake in and keeping violence, keeping a certain amount of fear in the population, keeping people wound up and angry so they're easier to manipulate.
And then you got the fear, because you can always appeal to the fear of like the parents or whatever. It's like, well, I don't want my kids to be a heroin addict, and I think Ron Paul said it best. Like, if they legalized heroin, would you like go out and do it tomorrow? Like, the people who are already doing these drugs are doing it.
Yeah.
So like, why not make it to where they can have the resources to help themselves, like seek counseling and stuff.
It's the same way I feel about like abortions, clean and, cheap or whatever, affordable.
Right.
Because they're going to happen. So might as well make it safe.
Yeah.
And not cause more problems. So, but I don't think the government's, trying to actually make it better.
No, yeah.
So governments are only good for is
monopoly.
Yeah, monopoly of force and stuff, and like helping the elite classes are the first people that glom on to the government because there's a power structure there. So that you get in there, you get your monopoly or whatever, you get paid. It's the court. It's what it is. It's a nobility court. So you go hang out in the king's court, you do some kind of service for him or make him look good, and then you get a cut of the action. So I mean. Like I said, if I was made king tomorrow, I'd be paying off my family's debt, hooking them up, making sure they're all well done, making my friends well done.
In positions, yeah.
And then I do that, and then, go to the people who have merit, But then when you're on top like that, you have to manage, the descent. So because you got other people who want your position, and there's a target on your head.
Right.
Which is why I don't want to be the top king. I just want to, that's why I'm an anarcho-sorcerer, I live like a king, but I'm not the king.
Right.
I'd rather be the maker of kings than the king.
This guy.
So that was the whole. That's the whole thing with the Pope. They had their power structure back in the day, and they anointed the kings.
Oh yeah, I think they did a really good example of that with.
Till King Henry was just like, fuck you, I'm starting the Anglican Church.
Yeah, and he didn't give a shit. Like, he was like, I want a divorce, and the Pope was like, you can't get a divorce, and he's like, I'm the king.
She's already dead.
Yeah, exactly, bro. Like,
It's messed up.
Yeah, but that was like a really good claim to power. Doing what's best for you, despite of like the way other people think about it. Or like, and then having that control. It's very similar, I guess, in a way to like people now with like the whole mask laws and the quarantine, and like you have all these peons. I think we talked about this last session. Yeah. Where like they're low status individuals and they have no power, so like they get to signal their virtue and bust out their cell phones and be like, put on your mask or whatever that is, and then like post it on Facebook or the
This is all
gram.
credit Michael Malice, by the way.
Yeah,
that's where we got it from.
Just
but
to be
true.
like, oh man, like I'm important or whatever. I think even Babylon Bee did an article today, a faux article. It was like, with coronavirus or COVID-19 coming to an end, there's a fear of these people never feeling good ever again, or like never feeling powerful.
Or we can do a video if we want to be funny, where we like get saran wrap one of our heads, and then we can't breathe, so we just kind of collapse and start like dying from strangulation or asphyxiation.
Whoa!
It's like one mask is good, two masks is better.
Well, I know the two mask thing. Okay, so I'm not sure what the two mask controversy is on the internet.
That's what it is.
I mean, I understand this, but I think maybe it just got misconstrued or something. Because, like, for instance, in my workplace, people, you know how people have like their custom masks that say weird shit on it, or like make them feel funny, make them have personality, right? So those aren't to company standards because they're not protective enough, and then people don't wash them, so they become like
I have never washed my one mask
well,
that I got
there
from
you go.
Gold's Gym.
See, so now it's like all sweaty and it's got your face all up in it. So they say if you want to wear your custom mask, you have to wear a 95 mask underneath it. And so I wonder if like people were doing that, and then like it got all out of control, and now
I
like
say if you want to
people
wear
are
a
socially
mask, wear a mask.
what's the word?
But I say let the fat people die.
Yeah.
And if you're worried about your own life, like manage your own risk.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm gonna wear a mask, one because I want service most places, and two, I live with my grandma, and I don't want to bring COVID back to my grandma, even though I'm pretty sure she could kick its ass.
Right. And then the fat people, I mean, terrible. I think there was an article saying that 30% of all deadly complications were from people that were obese.
What do you expect, man? It's hard to breathe already.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's really, like I think it's from obesity and from people who smoke often. So I don't know if I fall into that category because I'm not a cigarette smoker.
Yeah, I quit smoking, thank goodness.
You know, but I'm off. The weak are gonna die. It's gonna suck, and now you're gonna put on this onus on everybody. Shut down the economy, which is the lifeblood of our society and culture. It's bad.
Yeah.
So, you know, not that we're locked down too bad in Texas or whatever.
Well, it just really hurts like the lower class. But I really don't. I don't know. Like,
well, the lower class always gets hit the most.
No, the middle class always gets hit the most.
Well, financially,
the lower class can't get out. It's hard. They just make it harder and harder to get out.
Well, it's like when they started mandating insurance for like going to the hospital. They're like, if we mandate insurance, it's going to help the poor people out. But all it did was drive up prices, put lines in hospitals.
Give them a fine. Gave them a fine for not having insurance.
Give people fines for not having insurance. And
oh, man. Go ahead.
And and now everyone can go in there for any little sniffle. If you didn't there's I don't know if it's still up on YouTube, but it's from 21 Studios, Dr. Doug McGuff. You search Dr. Doug McGuff, and he talks about why the insurance thing was a scam. He goes through each and every iteration of law and how, because like he said, hospitals used to have a charity wing, and then if someone was poor and really sick, they could go in and get help. But because of the insurance, they've created this whole bureaucracy, and because it's a market economy, the doctor's going to charge as much as they can to get the most money, because that's how business works. Right. You know, you charge as much as what people will pay. So what you do is you charge the insurance as much as they'll pay, and then you charge the person as much as they can pay, and that's how the business works. But that doesn't. It's just bad. Yeah,
I remember what was it, 2009? I can't remember what year. It must have been 2011 when Medicare for All passed. I think during the Obama administration. What was it? The Freedom of Care Act, I think. I can't remember the right term, the name, but it happened, right? Obamacare, quotation marks.
Yeah.
I was getting screwed. I think I was in the lower class at the time, because I was in the first few years of being in the job market. So I was making minimum wage a little bit higher, maybe I think $8.50 or $9 or something like that. And or was I working Applebee's? And I go in and I'm working there, and one day after this law passes, my manager tells me that, okay, so now for people that work over 30 hours a week that receive benefits, we're going to have to pay for your insurance. And so we can't afford to do that. We can only do that with 2 of our employees. So we're going to do that for the assistant manager and the shift lead that's been here for 8 years. So now you can only work 27 hours a week. And I was like, cool. So now not only do I not have health care, but instead of working 36 hours a week, I'm working 26 hours a week. Now I don't have paid vacation. Now I don't have a 401k. Now I don't have any of those benefits for working at a company. And I have to go get another job. So now I'm working 2 jobs. I have to memorize twice as many menu items. I have to manage my time. I got to pay gas to go to these 2 things. Got to have 2 different uniforms, all that stuff. Still no benefits, So now I'm working more hours, which is okay. I'm making an extra $200, $180 or whatever and still can't afford insurance because insurance would have been $220 a check, $440 a month, which would have been approximately half my income at the time, you know. So I got screwed over. And then on top of that, Obama comes on the next day and he's like, look, we've doubled the amount of jobs on the market. And I was like, bro, that's because I got 2 jobs instead of 1 job, you know, and these are part-time jobs and I still don't have benefits. So I don't know. That really irked me. It was a really terrible time in my life. But again, with the lower class and minimum wage and all that stuff, a lot of that stuff is time constraints because the majority, I think it's like 60% of the people making minimum wage are like working part-time. 40% of those people, it's 40% of the people are working part-time. 60% of the people are like between the ages of 16 and 22. And then like you get out of it because, you know, you build up some experience and you move up the ladder. I know. Yeah. Weird economics, man.
Yeah, just one more thing to hammer on poor people getting screwed. I think I don't know if we talked about this on the podcast, but I've talked about it before elsewhere. Is I used to work for the local food bank, and because of regulation, there was an Equality Act. Equal opportunity. It got in the way of me giving out food at a distribution.
Oh yeah.
So, because it's like we got to make the rules fair for everybody. So it's like 2 or 3 rounds. Everyone gets to go through. We have to hand out so much, but it's not like, oh, we're at 50 minutes. We got 10 minutes left. Let's do a speed round, and people can just go through, and we'll just start handing them food. If every person, like people leave, well, I guess if people leave of their own volition, they can do that. But like, if we set the rules, we can't violate those rules. Because if anyone who calls and complains and says I'm not giving out food fairly, then, you know, I guess there's some kind of open liability to the food bank. And now because of some regulation, I hand out less food to these people who are already hungry. But of course, that law probably came into being because one of these dumb poor people complained. And, you know, maybe there was something bad going down, but it just made it worse for everybody.
Yeah, and it's the same thing with you know, I worked in the food industry for 10 years. And, like, if anybody in the United States, I don't know what it's like in other countries, but if you work in the food industry and you close the kitchen, you understand that there's a lot of product that is thrown out at the end of the day. And it's because of that very same
liability.
Thing. Regulations. Yeah. Liability regulations.
If someone gets the food and gets sick, you know, you're open up for lawsuit.
Instead of like, okay, how about these are all leftovers and according to, food health regulations, you can serve this for 3 days or whatever. You know, like technically all the restaurants in the United States could have like a soup kitchen open, like wing the very next day.
No hunger in United States if we could just hand out food that's about to go bad.
Yeah.
Quotations bad,
exactly,
not real bad. So.
And that's just regulation. That's just more red tape. Like instead of letting the people do their voluntary action through laissez-faire.
Yeah. But it all takes is one person. Someone gets sick or whatever.
Waivers, bro. Waivers, man. But of course,
that's more bureaucracy. Now you have to have someone there to like file paperwork and to like you have to print the paper. You got to pay for the ink and the toner, and like.
Oh man, well no. What about it?
And these people barely exist because they're on the street already.
What if you could do it like in the mosh pit? You just have a sign.
Mosh is your own risk.
Yeah, like not liable for injuries in the pit or whatever.
So a lawyer could probably work
over.
Their voodoo. Yeah, it's all about the law. And then the government backing the law and the guns backing those laws.
Right. It's like, oh, were you trying to help people?
Yeah, and because it all comes down to like the politicians who got to look. It's all about the optics,
right?
So they can take a stand on some non-issue, and then because they get elected, and then they execute on their issue, and then people are worse off.
Yeah, and they don't have any consequences for their actions.
Well, they get to say, I stopped this. I stopped people getting sick from dirty food handed out by restaurants.
Yeah.
You know, they get the rhetoric now. They get the kudos. And without even looking at what's really happening.
Yeah. Like, what is it? Rent control or whatever. It's like we created rent control so we could help these poor and middle class families afford their homes. And then now all the construction companies are building luxury homes for the rich because there's no
incentive.
Yeah.
And I don't feel bad for people who voted for Biden and now regret it. Because it's like, he said he was going to do all this stuff.
Yeah.
Talk is cheap. Like, we've done this. If you are like over the age of 30 and you've witnessed multiple elections with any kind of like awareness, you know these people just tell you what they need to say to get elected. And then even if they could do something against the bureaucracy, they don't have to because they're
in power.
Why buy the cow when you get the milk for free? It's the same thing. Like, they've already won. They don't need to fulfill because all they had to do was tell you. There's no contract there.
California is a good example.
If there was contracts with people getting elected, well, I guess then you'd have employees as opposed to politicians.
Right.
Which I think would be way better.
I don't know. Maybe.
But that only works if you have a constitution that's like rock solid, and that can't happen.
Well, something I see every day, particularly on Twitter, unhealthy app to be on, is you see a lot of people want the government to be really efficient. They want what they want to happen like immediately. And if there's any opposition, they just like slander the other side, and it's like, oh, well, the Republicans are holding us back, or oh, the Democrats are holding us back, and they want this and they want that. But they're too worried about like what they want executed versus like what the government was designed to do. Like the whole checks and balances, the three quarters majority, or 2/3 majority versus a simple majority. Like, the whole idea is that the government's supposed to be inefficient so that it can't do what it wants without the approval of the people, and the people are diverse throughout the nation.
Well, it's supposed to be the approval of landowners.
Yeah.
So people who
Which
had
would be nice,
people
dude.
who had skin in the game.
Dude. Yeah. Or what, landowners and I don't know. Yeah, I think it was just landowners. Male
landowners. I think it was probably male white landowners.
Dude, if you look at there was another map.
Well, I don't even know if it was always white. It was mostly white, but I think they had other people who were landowners that weren't white.
Yeah.
I don't know if they could participate in politics until it became a problem,
I think they could, because when you look at, what is it? Before there's a false date in which they said they introduced, like blacks on campus, because there was already blacks on campus in public schools and in public universities before.
But they had to politicize
the Civil War.
Right?
Yeah, they had to politicize it because those families were affluent families from either Europe, or they were like freed slaves that moved north and created trade. Or did trades and became wealthy and established in those areas. And they actually had a higher IQ than like poor whites from the South. I think there's a
Scotch-Irish trash.
Yeah, there was a study in World War II. So it was the United States military, and they broke, it was IQ tests of people from rural and metropolitan areas, and whites and blacks. I think they actually broke down like even further with whites, like they had Italians, Jews, and stuff like that. And it turns out that the northern blacks had higher IQ than white Southerners. And so these people were already participating in schools and university and had land and like had businesses and stuff like that. And then after the war, there was a migration of uneducated blacks into the north. And that like created a change in what's it called, culture or whatever. It's like the same thing, like all those things like cracker and axe and all those stuff. Those ebonics aren't from black culture. They're actually from like poor white culture, and they go back to the UK, not Africa.
This is credited to Thomas Sowell.
Thomas Sowell, yeah.
Sowell, yeah.
And so it's just like, it's always an appeal. Like, it's always an appeal to emotion. It's always an appeal to like a false character for people to like a boogeyman for people to rally around and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because like the majority of the population is of average intelligence, which is not high.
And largely ignorant and being spoon-fed, their worldview from the media and the government. So I mean, yeah, I'm not surprised. The more I see this stuff going down, it becomes increasing. I think this is what it's the red pill. Is just you just see it all, and there's probably some places where I probably get caught up in it. I think I see it in the micro now with like different YouTube channels and just seeing like the algorithms that work. People having to make clickbait titles and all that stuff, and just once I'm aware of it, I'm just like I'm not interested anymore. I wish the YouTube algorithm was better, man. Because I used to get all kinds of. I think it's too limited. I think there's just so many people that are I call them clickbait monkeys. Like they're so triggered. Like the algorithm is not written for me. It's written for like a more average person.
Okay.
Just like triggered all the time. They're programmed to respond a certain way.
So it's too narrow?
Yeah, it's too narrow for me. I want to see more tangential stuff. And of course I'll probably see more, but shadow banning and all that stuff's probably making it worse. And I do have pretty narrow interests, but I feel like there's got to be a whole world of content out there that'd be interesting that I'm not being, that's not being fed to me because of a freaking AI program that's not tuned to, the Harvard smart people. It's tuned to average American, I guess. So that kind of bums me out because I got to go looking for more stuff. I got to wait for a podcast to like, hey, check this out. And I'm like, right on.
I mean, it's bad in the sense that like the marketing apparatus doesn't work as efficiently for you.
Yeah.
It's good in the sense that, maybe it'll help us as far as reaching people and then people that sell products.
Yeah.
But it's also good in the sense that, I think it was Alex Jones. Alex Jones was talking about the AI and the hive mind and how AI wants to control the people, but it can't. So it has to, people have to agree to being controlled, right? So that's why instead of you searching for what it is that you want, like the people that are controlled by the algorithm, they just like, oh, what's next? Recommended, instead of like searching for what
TikTok,
it is that
I heard you don't even have to click next. It just keeps
goes.
Rolling.
Yeah.
Yeah, any technology that feeds impatience should be invested in.
Yeah.
Because that's what people want.
They make money.
They want easier access.
They don't want to think.
They don't want to go drive to Taco Bell to pick up their burritos when they could have them delivered. Why go through all the traffic?
And they'll pay twice the amount of money.
2 to 3 times.
Yeah.
If it's a small order, you're paying almost double, triple sometimes just to not drive through traffic. Which, I mean, if you can afford it, go for it. Whatever. It's your money. Yeah, ball out. Live like a king. But what was I saying?
Oh, yeah. Invest in things
things that feed impatience?
Yes.
Yeah. If the more you understand the human animal, I guess the more you know about what businesses are out there. So I guess you have to learn more about like the new businesses. Like that's where the money's going to be at. Virtual reality. I wonder if you could invest in like Oculus right now. It'd probably be more of an investment thing than a trading opportunity.
So I'm not even know if I'm supposed to know about this, but I do understand that people within this field of AI and like robotics and engineering. I was talking to somebody the other day that said that now they have a retinal projection technology to where they can fill your eye. So like instead of you wearing glasses or goggles or whatever, they can fill your eye with stimulus. And so there's a potential that like if you have this technology, you can be immersed in augmented reality and like not even know it. And that to me seems scary as like a torture device. Like, could you imagine if you're like locked up in this machine and they could do a perfect projection, like sensor for sensor in your eye and like play out you like being eaten alive or someone you love being killed or some shit like that.
Once they do Neuralink and they hijack directly into the brain, from what I've learned, the eyes are just an extension of your brain to take in light data. Same thing with the other senses. As long as if you can plug directly into the brain and hit those receptors,
it's
the Matrix.
They'll completely replace your field of vision. And so if you did that plus like having an apparatus for your sensory organs, then you could be like, it wouldn't just look real, it'd feel real too. And so like
and your
as
reality
fun as
would
that
totally be
as fun as that
constructed.
sounds as video games, like that also sounds like really scary for like control.
Well, I mean, that might be the way to handle like what we would call losers, like people who ain't got nothing, like that are on the bums on the street. It's like, why don't we just plug them in and hook them up to some like amino acids and put them in the program? You know, we could hit their heroin buttons and they can be.
And they could be living like Ready Player One. So it's like they're
they'll be-
shitty in real life, but they have like a mansion in the fake world.
Well, like it'll depend, because what if they reject the simulation like they did in the Matrix when life was too good? Because we are built to struggle and grow. You know, I guess unless someone's broken down like that, if they're living on the street, you can give them that simulation. You know, and then leave.
It's like, here, go lay down in this pod where we like feed you pastes.
Yeah, but at that point, once they're jacked in, you might as well just dissolve them into to nothing.
Yeah,
since they already checked out.
Oh
you know?
man.
Yeah, it's bad at that point. Of course, you know, then that might be a waste of, you know, all that the thermal energy from the human.
Dude. And then we literally go into the Matrix, right? Like,
yeah, maybe, like.
Well, on the other spectrum is, what is it? Our life expectancy is supposed to increase like 100 years or something like that. And then they say that like the only reason that you would die is from heart failure. But if you use stem cells, you can clone, like you could shave your beard and they can take your beard and reverse engineer them into stem cells and then re-engineer them into heart cells. And then you could grow your own heart, not anyone else's heart. And then just have a heart transplant with yourself.
They had this in a book called The House of Scorpion. I don't know if you ever read it.
Never.
It was on a reading list when I was in Miller or something. And the whole premise was it's going to be spoilers, just let you know. It's the Mexico had reintegrated the southern half of the United States. Not that this is like the matter, but the main character was a clone.
Oh.
But he didn't know it.
Okay.
And he lived under this rich old man. And the whole thing, this rich old man, most rich people in this world, they have they don't give like neural capability to the clones. Usually they're just like retards for organs.
Oh, okay.
So, and they harvest the organs and they keep them alive forever.
Nice.
But this guy's like, I give my clones the experience to, you know, give them a good life. And the whole thing was he was gonna die, but his nurse or whatever, his keeper had been microdosing him arsenic, so he had like organ damage.
Oh,
so that was the whole thing.
Heard that.
But yeah, that was in a book.
Heard that.
Yeah, organ harvesting. The thing I would love to invest in is stem cell therapy for teeth.
For teeth.
Because I hate cavities. I'm not the best with my dental hygiene like I should be. I'm trying to get it back, but I know my mouth's fucked up.
Right.
I don't want to lose teeth. I want to have, I don't need perfect teeth.
What about golden teeth, bro?
No.
No.
Come on, man. I'm not that trashy. But like, if they could just like a stem cell, some kind of like gel, and just like be toothpaste.
Stem cell toothpaste, bro.
Yeah,
oh,
man.
dude, that sounds like money. I wonder how much a tube would cost.
But then, you know, dentists would go out of business.
Oh, yeah. Oh, and then there'd be like some sort of dentistry union.
Yeah,
like
trying to shut
mobilizing
down
against
this product. If they could do that, where I don't have to get drilled or have fillings or root canal.
Well, I understand that kind of shit's like already has a big pushback in the United States.
That's what I want. I'd pay money for that.
Dude, because what it was, Joe Rogan was talking to fucking Dustin Poirier the other day, and they were talking about stem cells and stuff, and he's like, yeah, no, if you want the real stem cells, you want to go to Panama. He was like, the Panama, they have like different regulations for stem cells, and they can like hook you up with it.
No, we got the
there.
we got the real dead baby stem cells down here. Yeah.
Well, it's good. That's another thing, you know. I think like as much as I'm opposed to abortion, I understand its utility and then also like its safe and effectiveness. But like X amount of babies had to be aborted to do stem cell research to now you don't need infants or actual stem cells from the womb or from the umbilical cord. You can reverse engineer hair or skin cells back to their stem cell point.
If we can do that already, I don't understand how we're not already immortal practically.
Money.
Money?
Yeah, because that's what I was just talking about. So
And it's got to take a huge energy expenditure to do this too. It can't
in
be
what way?
like
Because it's a chemical reaction. Like growing meat is a chemical reaction.
Oh,
So
so
you would just need like a container to like keep it.
they just can't do it fast.
Yeah, yeah, because your heart would take like if you'd have to have it incubating for 18 years for you to have an adult heart,
Well,
right? Or 18 years
at
for
that point,
adult lungs.
try to adapt that into like a regenerative therapy. So like you don't need to grow the other heart. You can just like rejuvenate, you know, the
There's
organs you have.
There's a group of medical firms that are trying to treat aging like a disease, and so they found the genome in the human DNA that is coded to say grow, and then at a certain point decay. I'm not exactly know how it works. I'm not a scientist.
Yeah.
But that's the easiest way I've understand that it's been described to me. And then they found that you can actually age in reverse. So, they're thinking that the age limit is 160 to 200 because of heart failure. But they say that like
I thought it was about 120 from
that's
what I've
just
read.
a rough estimate. They're also suggesting that there is no high level. There's no cap, right? Because they would say that if you were like, let's say you were 60 and then you started taking this dietary supplement or these series of pills or this injection or whatever, you could age back to 28 and then you would stay 28 until you died of natural causes or car crash or whatever the hell.
Well, natural causes like organ failure.
Yeah.
Like, that's what it ultimately comes down to.
Well, I mean, we already have that here in the United States. You know, wealthy nations, Western cultures, Japan and China, our number one mortality is heart failure or cancer. You know, whereas like people in Africa,
Yeah, we eat too much sugar.
They die of smoke inhalation, right? Because they don't have, because they're burning to cook food instead of like having gas ovens or electric ovens and stuff like that.
Oh, they don't have the technology.
Yeah, or
you know,
like
the sanitation.
Yeah, or they're the same thing with their cars. Like I was in Costa Rica a couple years ago, beautiful country, but they don't have regulations on like air pollution. So when you're by the street, dude, and cars are driving by, it's just like, holy shit, this is what it must have been like in like the 20s or whatever. You're just like getting all this carbon monoxide. You know?
Well, the country's not rich enough to like have a demand for greener energy.
Yeah.
You know.
And those cars are like all old cars. It was actually pretty cool seeing like a bunch of old cars.
In fact, and for their economy, it'd probably be better for them to have like, what would it be, like a body shop or whatever, instead of like replacing the entire car. They can just
fix it,
replace the fuel system, so it burns cleaner or something. Put a carbon trap on it or whatever. You know, if I was guessing, but who knows? Maybe it's cheaper just to build the cars and ship them down there. I don't know.
And then to just work it's different down there too. Like they don't have like sanitary. They don't have OSHA. You know, and even with OSHA, like the number one amount for deaths in the United States in construction is falling down.
Yeah, that's why I don't do ladder work.
Yeah.
Plus, I'm makes me terrified.
Dude, it's super cool. I remember one time I was like super terrified because there was like this like wobbly ass board I had to go on, and I just had to go like 4 feet, but I was like 250 feet in the air, some shit like that, and I was like, I can't walk on this board. And my fucking what's it called? My foreman, he was hooked up to the scaffold. And with his harness, right? I had my harness on too, but I wasn't on the scaffold, and there was no cable. So he just like reached out, right? He was like, "Hold my hand," and it was like, I mean, this is why it sounded like super gay or whatever, dude. But I like grabbed him, and he like pulled me in, and I hugged him, and I was like, "Oh my god, thank you, dude!" Like, you know, just had to overcome those fears. I mean, I think I slipped and fell twice, dude. Like, and luckily I had my harness on. I couldn't imagine like building the what was it, Empire State Building, bro, and everybody's just like walking around.
Yeah, I watched I think it was Human Story of Mankind or something like that. It was a nice documentary back then on Netflix. I don't know where it's at now. I'd love to watch it. It was a very good one. But yeah, they talked about like all the skyscrapers in New York. Like they said, there's nothing like having a rookie walking the bars or the beams or whatever. How they talked about it, like I wouldn't want to do that, dude. I'd rather.
Dude, but you're making like back then $20 an hour, bro. Like,
Well, I
shit. That's
I
like
think I'd rather go into the military
then. All right,
than to build skyscrapers like
sense.
that. Like, I'd rather go shill for the government and oppress brown people for gasoline.
Yeah. Oh man.
Than to build a skyscraper like that. But luckily, I'm smart. I could podcast and do other stuff.
Yeah.
Get into day trading or whatever. Like, I don't have a whole lot of excuses or a need to engage in dangerous activity for a living.
We're in a different economy, man. You know,
Yeah.
we got like all this communication era stuff. It's pretty epic.
Well, it could collapse tomorrow, but at least I know how to like drywall and stuff.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, there you go. Yeah, and yeah.
But, yeah, it's pretty set. Yeah, I couldn't do the heights, man.
Life's good. No, it's good, man. I do miss working with a team like that. It was super cool. Like, and working with foreigners. That was always nice and humbling because they don't bitch nearly as much as Americans do, man. I don't know. Maybe we're just like,
I think they're just grateful.
yeah, it's grateful. And then like, we're all, what's the word? Take things for granted.
Yeah, because the job that some young person is hating, like there's a person in Mexico or in Africa that's like, I could go work at McDonald's and make money.
Yeah, make $10 an hour.
You know, I could sleep on a mattress.
Yeah,
like,
dude.
You know.
Yeah, there was a group of guys. There was 3 dudes from Ecuador I was working with, and they were like, all their family was back home. And I was like, so what are you doing? You know, what are you up to? Y'all gonna move up here or whatever? And they were like, nah, man, nah. Like, I'm just working up here. I'm gonna work 36, 40 hours a week. Or no, what the fuck am I saying? 56, 60 hours a week. And like crush it hard for 10 years and then like go home and start my own company or like build my own house and all this shit. Like build a cinder block house and like have a nice car or whatever because the conversion rate's so nice. And it's like they don't even care. They're not like partiers. They don't like go out. They didn't drink. They were all staying at the same apartment complex. They were like basically roommates, and they worked together. And they would like, you know, everything was cheap. They'd throw in on gas, share the same car, live in the same house, and it was like, that's just so cool, you know. Versus like, you know, working at a restaurant. This dude's getting paid, wants $20 an hour to wash these dishes, and living in a fucking closet for $900 a month, whatever. Like,
yeah, it's wild, man.
Yeah, God bless America.
Yeah,
for sure.
I could probably do closet life if I had a good job.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I had a place to hang my clothes, place to shower, place to sleep, and I was busy. Yeah, I don't see why not.
Yeah, I guess so.
I mean, it'd have to be like I mean, the job would have to like not be like any sort of discontent creeping my mind. I'd probably hate it real quick.
Right.
You know.
That's how it was in Alaska, bro. I was in a room smaller than this one with 3 roommates, and then we had a bathroom, shower, and then on the other side of that was another room the size of mine with 4 other people living in it. And you know, I hated every minute of it, and I loved the experience. I'd never do it again. Make some good money if you like working 112 hours a week with no days off. Yeah. But that was good too. More foreigners, more foreign than Central and South America. There was people from Vietnam and Poland and stuff there. That was pretty cool. And they all did it for family, dude. They all had like, they weren't thinking about themselves. Like Americans are really like narcissistic. Like CRT, critical race theory, is like a really good example of narcissism, right? Because it's like, it plays on people's need to feel superior morally, and then also the victim mentality, like being like, there's a good example. Man, I'm trying to remember this couple of sentences that's really like shows that it's a narcissistic tendency to like take the victimhood thing and to blame everything on other people instead of looking at yourself and like trying to come up with a solution to your problems.
Yeah, for people actively participating in the oppression Olympics, yeah, I can definitely see how that's narcissistic. And then, yeah, I think a lot of like the whole white girl syndrome of like, I am helping you, so appreciate me, or I'm important.
Right.
There's also that element of narcissism. Because I was thinking about like actual minorities who participating, and I don't know if it's super narcissistic. There's probably in a way. I don't think it really matters. I think obviously I think it's really dumb, in that people should completely disregard racism when there's no crime.
Yeah.
You know, well, actually, I should amend that. If someone is experiencing racism, and it's like a problem, not if someone's making jokes. Like if you're offended by the jokes, or if anything makes you uncomfortable or hurts you, you should leave.
Right.
You should go somewhere else. You know, if you know your legs and all that stuff works too, whatever.
Right.
You know, and if not, you can probably will yourself away if you're in a wheelchair. You know, but like, you don't have to hang, like freedom of association. If the racism is getting in your way of advancing at work, like legitimately, you can go work for a different company, especially if you're skilled. If you have the skills, if you have the merit,
get a job anywhere.
It doesn't matter anywhere.
Yeah.
If you're underappreciated, this goes beyond critical race theory. If you're underappreciated at your restaurant you're working at, then you have negotiating power to go work at another restaurant.
Yeah.
Commensurate with the market price and the value and demand of your skills. Like, it's people who give into the racism, then they start making excuses and they build a whole worldview where they're oppressed, and then they shut down their creative capacity.
And they can't get on because people are keeping them down or whatever.
Yeah. You know, then if you look at every white person and say, oh, that person's racist, how is that going to affect your ability to communicate and build like solid relationships that are mutually beneficial?
Right. Develop skills that people are willing to pay for.
Yeah, or just even if you're likable. If you have bare minimum skills and you're likable, I would rather work with someone likable than someone who's like
brings the team
talented
down
and who's got a crappy attitude, or is just gonna create drama at a certain point. I guess it's an economic decision at that point. You know, if it's worth it or not. But
yeah,
you know, same thing. Good attitude, but racism. Only if it's real and it's impacting you, yeah, go somewhere else. If not, though, like you have to be really honest with yourself about your situation, and maybe consider it. Of course, I'm a white man, so the racism I experienced, if you would call it that, was completely different than that of a minority. You know.
Well, growing up Latino in Texas, you know, I remember, you know, supposedly I live in a really racist state. I never dealt with that. Personally, or like a very few instances in my life. When I was in Washington State, it was the opposite. It seemed like everyone I met had some sort of weird discrimination. But I think Thomas Sowell really separates this well. He talks about the difference between racism and discrimination. Racism being something that's an opinion, something that's in someone's mind, and you can't change that fact. You know, unless you're like, that's part of your calling and you want to like change races to not being racist. I think, I can't remember, there's a really famous guy that did that like converted a bunch of Ku Klux Klan members.
Oh, Daryl Davis.
Yeah.
Yeah, and how did he do it? He didn't do it by critical race theory. He did it by hanging out with people.
Yeah, and being like, oh man. You know, and then the other one, the difference between racism and discrimination is discrimination has like an actual effect on you. Like, you can't get this job because you're black, or you can't get this job because you're white, or like, we won't service you because of your ethnicity or your religion or whatever. That's discrimination.
So yeah, racism is just the idea as opposed to the actual action
of
in the material world. Yeah. That makes sense.
And then, what else? What were you saying? You're talking about racism and discrimination.
I was saying, like, pretend racism doesn't even exist. And
oh yeah, I was gonna say with curating, like, you can walk away, you don't have to be around those people. I think this is a very good example of how social media should interact. Like, instead of having top-down control where you have Facebook and Twitter and all these big companies was getting rid of people on the internet, like silencing them or blocking them or banning them or whatever it is. You could just like unfollow, dude. Unfollow, mute.
This is where the block button's at. This is how you use it.
Boom.
Use it wisely.
Yeah, because you don't have to put up with that stuff. Like, there's no reason for you to do that unless like you like being miserable and you're like, I want to see this person's disastrous tweets so that I can be offended and so I can make a quirky, snarky comeback so that I can get likes or whatever and signal to the other people, you know.
At
like
that point, that's like pride and emotional issues,
narcissism, bro.
As opposed to like pride, yeah, definitely. As opposed, it's a trying to build a self-esteem, as opposed to living healthily.
Yeah,
being effective. It's whatever, man.
So,
well, we're on the hour.
Okay.
So it's been good hanging out with everybody. We're on YouTube mostly, so go ahead and give us a like and subscribe if you feel like it, or comment something down. If you're feeling generous and like hanging out with us and like to see more, you can always donate to us on the Patreon. With as little as $1, you can join the Noble Peasants class because we like peasants and we want them to be more noble. If you'd like to hang out with us on Discord, you can give us $5 a month and be part of the Patriot Lord community.
Open onto the channel.
And if you are supremely generous, you can always donate $20 a month as part of the Anarcho-Sorcerer class. And we don't have a whole lot going on there. I'll read your tarot. I'll do your astrological chart, whatever you want. And whenever we start getting some merch in this bitch, you'll be the first ones to know. You will get what would be premium, primary, like the most immediate, whatever you need,
First class status or whatever.
First class status. Not sucking your dick, but whatever.
Yeah. What is it? Follow me on Twitter. I'm at Mario_DTW. If you want to I don't post often, but I share a lot.
Yeah. He's on that Twitter game.
We're gonna be doing locals probably here soon, or looking into some other things that we can do to help build a community and interact with you guys
and streamline our technical load too. Just the two of us now, we can always whatever, come hang out with us next time. We'll be back next week. It's been good hanging out with you. I am Aaron James, one of your hosts,
and Mario. Good working with y'all. Cheers.
Yeah, see you next week.